We are broadcasting live from ECC in Belgium. Thank you for standing by. Just got caught in some downpour, but we're at a quiet place now and excited to share updates on the protocol side. We'll give it a minute. Dennis on the DevX side just joined. I'm with Lucas on the blockchain engineering side, and we're just waiting on one more. We'll get started in one moment. Waiting on Panru, who's been doing a lot of research into the Solana integration. And one of the topics I wanted to share updates on with you guys today. If not, we'll get started on the rest of the agenda. I'm hearing Panru has electricity issues actually. So it's raining here in Belgium. Everybody's got some issues, but yeah, let's get started. I'm in the room with Lucas Bertrand, who contributes to engineering. Lucas, want to reintroduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. So I work with ZetaChain. I'm leading the protocol development with Padro, with the CEO. I'm focusing more like on the actual development, putting things in productions, while Padro is more like on the R&D and research phase for the development. And yeah,
Cool. And
that's my
you just did a big keynote at the Universal Blockchain Summit here at ECC. We're broadcasting from Belgium. What's the vibe like? How has the conference been so far?
Yeah, it's been great. There is a lot of interest in everything around interoperability in general, the multi-chain. So we talk about a lot about our vision of chain abstraction, providing to developers an environment and experience where they don't need to think about what underlying chains they're working on when they develop cross-chain applications. This is something we've been talking a lot with developers at HHCT, and there is a lot of interest in this vision in general. Yeah, and it seems like the multi-chain narrative, the chain abstraction interoperability is still very strong narrative that's getting more and more interest.
For sure. And we had a bunch of partners today at the summit and ran some really cool panels. I got to moderate a chat with Alchemy, which just came on board for developers. XDeFi was on that panel. Tenderly just went live. This is not public news, actually. So excited to share more on that. And yeah, the developer scene here is stronger than other conferences we've been at. Dennis, sorry you had a conflict and can't be here with us. How's it going? And remind us what you work on the ZetaChain protocol.
Hey everyone, my name is Dennis. I do developer experience, primarily focusing on tooling and tutorials, documentation. So, yeah.
Cool, thank you. So yeah, let's go through just 3 or 4 key topics here. You guys have been doing a lot of work along with other contributors in June. So let's talk about that. And then for folks listening, if you have questions about the protocol, about how ZetaChain works, how to develop universal apps on ZetaChain, shoot them in the thread, and we'll bring you on as speakers in the second half here. So the first thing is this transition from a point-to-point messaging system to a universal hub and spoke model. Lucas, maybe talk about some of the protocol changes and the shift to the hub and spoke architecture, and then we'll hear how this is reflected in the documentation after.
Yeah, sure. So maybe to give some context on the original design. So ZetaChain we used to support, and we are still supporting two different type of solution to develop cross-chain applications. The first one that was originally developed was what we call message passing, the idea that you will deploy, if you want to build a cross-chain application that connects the chain A, let's say Ethereum and BSC, the chain B, you will deploy logic on Ethereum and then some of the contract logic on BSC. And ZetaChain as an interoperability protocol will, hence the name, pass the message, relay message from two external chains. So, for example, from Ethereum, you want to build decentralized exchange. You will put your logic, your order book, or your liquidity pool, if it's AMM, on either Ethereum and BSC. Then from one of the two chains, you will initiate message that will then be processed on the other chain. That's message passing. So end-to-end communication. Then the second one is omnichain smart contracts that we focus more and more over time, which is the idea that the main logic of your application, if not all of the logic, is deployed on ZetaChain. And ZetaChain acts as some sort of a hub where basically all interaction that are initiated from external chain will be processed on ZetaChain. And then eventually ZetaChain withdraws some token on one of the external chain. So the decentralized exchange example here would be that your liquidity pool are on ZetaChain, you initiate a swap for Ethereum, that is processed on ZetaChain, and then you receive the swap token on BSC, for example. The original vision for omnichain smart contract was like you only build your logic on ZetaChain and then you just manage assets on external chain. Now we are extending this architecture to also allows triggering smart contract call on external chain. So you can from ZetaChain also call smart contracts into external chain. Given this, so we realize over time that all the advantages that you have with message passing are being developed with the omnichain smart contract model. And we realized that there were no real sense to keep both of them at the same time, because the vision of omnichain smart contract is becoming more and more as complete as you can. All the implementation you can do basically with the omnichain smart contract, you can do it. Everything you can do with message passing, so you can do it with omnichain smart contract call. So the idea is not that we remove message passing point-to-point messaging system. Is that we adapt it to make it basically unified with omnichain smart contracts. So if you want to do point-to-point messaging system, it's still something that will be possible, but basically the transaction will be sent first to ZetaChain, but then forwarded to the external chain. So ZetaChain, for every interactions you do for a decentralized application, will act as a hub, as a central point for your application.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like a lot of simplification is happening?
Yeah, on the design. So first in the protocol, the code base itself, it will be a lot of simplification. Like there will be a single model that is to be maintained. So for external contributors that want to contribute to blockchain, will be much easier to understand what happened under the hood, the interaction with the protocol. But also for developers, that will be a huge simplification since there will be like a single entry point you use to interact with cross-chain decentralized application. And yeah, this is yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Dennis, keen to hear your perspective on this transition from point-to-point messaging system to universal hub and spoke model and how this is being reflected in the Zeta docs, for example. Anything to add there?
Yeah, I think ZRC20 is a very powerful mechanism that will become even more important as we transition to this hub model, because basically with messaging you would have a contract that locks tokens inside the contract, and then you would transfer a message to a different chain, and then you would unlock tokens. This works, but this requires most contracts to have custody over the tokens that users want to move. Let's say you want to move USDC, right? A contract would hold custody over the USDC that you're transferring, or any other token for that matter. With ZetaChain, it's simplified because we don't have tens of chains, or like potentially hundreds of chains to worry about. We only have one chain where we can represent all these assets from all these chains, so you can easily manage them. And your contract doesn't have to own have the custody over the assets, right? It's taken care of by the protocol. So I think that's very powerful, because yeah, you only implement the logic to deal with these assets, and you don't worry about them being safely transferred from chain to chain. So from developers' point of view, it's much easier. So I think the hub and spoke model also offers interesting possibilities in terms of liquidity, right? Because if you have a bunch of different chains, liquidity is fragmented. There are solutions to this, but like our solution is to have liquidity pools for all the tokens we support on ZetaChain, and all dApps can tap into this unified liquidity pools. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks. And then it sounds like there have been some updates on how developers interact with universal apps from connected chains like Ethereum, Binance, Bitcoin currently, and then also the other way around, how universal apps call contracts on those connected chains. What's like the TLDR on those updates? Anything to share, Lucas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bit related to the points I was talking about just before, simplifying as well the developer experience by giving a single entry point they need to interact with if they want to interact with universal apps developed on ZetaChain. So to give more details on that, there are smart contract revamp that we're doing. So simplifying the smart contracts that are interfaced to the end user and the developer. So to give some more details on that, for each external chain and ZetaChain itself, there will be a single smart contract that developers and user need to interact with for all the cross-chain communication that we call the gateway contracts. So there will be a gateway contract on Ethereum, on BSC, on Bitcoin as well. It's not a contract, but it will be an address. We'll call it. So it's still what is Rhino the TSS address, but it will be rebranded into the gateway address. So it's consolidated into this idea that you have gateway that are the entry point for all the chains. And so you will be able, from a gateway contract to what you can do right now with omni-chain smart contracts, deposit assets into a ERC20 deposit and call smart contracts, but also use the gateway contract to do what you used to be doing right now with message passing. So transferring Zeta. So Zeta will become, instead of a token for message passing, a token that you can deposit and withdraw, the same as ZRC20. So there is this consolidation into gateway contracts. And yeah, this is something that we are currently developing, dealing with in progress. We plan to release a local environment network specifically for contracts very soon, and it will be part of the release that we plan to make during August.
Awesome. And Dennis, back to you. Anything to share on DevX on that topic?
Yeah, the gateway contract is going to dramatically simplify the developer experience, because right now you have to worry about a bunch of different addresses and they have different APIs, right? You have to send a transaction with ETH to a TSS address, but you have to call the deposit method of the ERC20 custody contract. With just a single contract, you're just going to have all the methods available. We're also thinking about providing you with information about gas, so that a contract that is calling your universal app can know how much gas it needs to send if it wants to withdraw Bitcoin, for example, BTC to Bitcoin. So all these helper methods are going to make developers' lives so much easier. And also the local development environment is a very big deal because it's super fast. It's kind of emulating what ZetaChain is doing on a global scale, right? In a decentralized way with observer validators, and but with this local environment, it all runs on your machine. It's super fast, so it's going to make testing that much easier. So right now you test using existing test nets, and it takes about roughly 6 to 10 minutes for a transaction to go through from one chain to another, sometimes less, sometimes more, but with this, it's just instantaneous. And the shorter this feedback loop is for developers, the faster they can develop things. Of course, you're still going to want to test on testnet because there are things like this latency that you need to take into account, especially if you're building a front-end application, right? You need to take this into account. But for quick iterations, especially when you're just starting to build something and you're experimenting, I think it's a huge DevX improvement.
Yeah, and like what went into standing up this local development environment? And like, can we think of it as, like you said, similar to a test net, but just faster? Like it should be in parity with ZetaChain testnet?
Yeah, so right now, if I'm not mistaken, and Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's emulating these calls. So like everything is running on your machine. You have ZetaChain running, and you deploy your contract to that chain running locally, and you can call your contract through the same machinery, right? Through the same protocol contracts, except it's all running on your machine. But I think the next step is going to be having this local development environment actually watch external chains. So, but instead of observer validators voting on these transactions and actually observing, you would just have one program running on your machine, right? So instead of a consensus between observer validators, which is necessary for a production environment and even testnet, like for local development, you don't care about this, right? It's you just want to see your contract being called from Sepolia or BNB testnet, and you want to get the result as quickly as possible without necessarily having all this consensus, which is not necessary for you at this stage when you're just building.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the main idea. So more generally, I would say we're building several solutions that will simplify the experience for the developers to test their application, but also to test the deployment of the application. So as Denis mentioned, there is this full smart contract local net environment where basically it's just to test the smart contract interactions. If you're a developer building like a smart contract cross-chain application that is fully on Solidity EVM smart contracts, you actually don't really care about like all the cross-chain side, like how the data are transferred. You more care about how the application interacts end-to-end. So we're offering this environment that will allow us a very quick release process, a quick development lifecycle where it's like a Hardhat local net or a Foundry like a Envil local net where basically everything is deployed on the same EVM, but it will simulate like connection between the different chains. So on the same EVM, you will be able to deploy like the part of the smart contract that is supposed to be on Ethereum and the part of smart contract that is supposed to be on ZetaChain. So this is an environment that will simplify a lot the experience of testing your application when it's fully on the Solidity side. Now we are also making some other progress on development environments, and one other one is the DevNets. So as I said, you don't really care about the transport of data when you build cross-chain application, but at some point, you don't care about it when you build the logic of your application. If you want to test the correctness of the logic of your cross-chain application, but you still want to test it in a more real environment where the transaction that you do is actually observed, transported by the messaging protocol that Rano. And for this, we're developing the DevNets that will be following the same state of development as we are doing in our repository. So the developers will be able to use a ZetaChain environment the same as it's going to be for the next release, so they can directly test new features that are in development. Notably, very soon, Solana that we're integrating. So you will be able to directly test interaction with Solana in a local environment directly with the local net without you having to deploy your own local nets. So this will simplify a lot testing your application end-to-end. And of course, we're still going to support the test nets, but the test nets will follow like the same life cycle of upgrades as the main nets, in the sense that we make a new release, then we make the upgrade on test nets, then a few weeks after the upgrade, we make a proposal for the upgrade on the main nets. So yeah, smart contract environment to test your application logic very quickly, DevNet to test your application end-to-end for next features that we're developing.
Awesome. And yeah, Ponder is still having connectivity issues, so we're going to do a separate call on Solana.
I can still give updates on that. So Rano, We're in the process of doing research and implementation for Solana testnets. So in the next testnet upgrade that we're doing, we plan to add integration for Solana testnets. Solana will be integrated in the same integration we have for other chains we have right now, using the TSS observer signer mechanism. So you make transactional Solana, it is observed by this observer set. Then the TSS is used to sign transaction to Solana. So you will be able to interact with Solana the same way you interact with Bitcoin. You can deposit and call smart contracts on ZetaChain and withdraw Sol token back to Solana. That's the initial integration that we are currently working on. In the future, of course, soon it will be smart contract supports. So in Solana, I mean, program supports, calling programs on Solana from ZetaChain.
Sweet. Yeah, looking forward to updates. That's going to be wild. Okay, that's a lot. Want to open it up for questions. We have a prize pool, so 20 Zeta to incentivize good questions about the protocol and some of these updates we're sharing. So you could also ask technical questions in the AMA thread. Also feel free to request to be a speaker. I see Ruben in the Philippines, Ricky, Indonesia, Wolfer, CIS. Shout out to all of you guys. We're all going to make it, Guy. You have the floor. Questions about ZetaChain protocol. Please go for it. In the meantime, anyone else with technical questions, feel free to raise your hand. 20 Zeta for any great tech questions. I will DM you from ZetaChain official for your EVM address. We're all going to make it. You got the floor. Go for it. And he's gone. Another call for any technical questions. 20 Zeta. Right to your EVM wallet address for any good tech questions. And again, we're sharing updates on this shift from point-to-point messaging to the universal hub and spoke model to simplify developer experience. Universal apps will still use messaging. And then updates on this new local development environment, faster way to test applications you're building. And is the DevNet new, or?
It's currently in development, and it will be available for developer in the coming month.
Cool. And will all developers start on DevNet, and then go to testnet?
Up to their choice. It depends. So the main advantage of the DevNet is to test new features that are in development. The release and upgrade process is somewhat slow when you're developing a blockchain because the blockchain is decentralized. So when you want to make a software upgrade, you need to go through a governance process. The community votes the governance, then you upgrade to a new version. We follow this process for testnets and mainnets. We want the testnet to always be synchronized with mainnet because that's the actual utility, the interest for the testnets. So we can't make a very quick upgrade process for testnets, and so it might be a slow. It might slow the development for developers that want to test new integration quickly. Like if you take Solana, for example, if you would like to test Solana right now, you would need to wait for it to be available on testnet. But I can also give another example is IBC integration that we're doing right now for allowing any customers chain to interact with smart contract on the chain. This is something that we plan for the release after. The release will be done in August, but the actual time it will be on mainnet and testnet will be later in the future because you need to go through the governance proposals process, things like that. So the DevNet is really to test everything that is already merged in the development branch that contains like all the new features we're bringing to the new release. And so this will allow developers to really test like new features. The testnet can still be used to test the actual stable environment you have right now in the network, the actual sets, feature sets that you have on mainnet. You can use the testnet for that. So it really depends. The DevNet application that you built might eventually not be compatible with what is already done on mainnet. So yeah, it depends on your application if it uses like new features that are in development or not.
Yeah, from tutorial point of view, we're definitely gonna start develop kind of the process. The flow is gonna start with your local development environment, then testnet, then mainnet, and I think DevNet is still just gonna be for people who wanna try new things, as Lucas said, but it's not a replacement for testnet because yeah, it's just a bit too unstable in terms of well, not in terms of like the security or like chain halts or anything, but in terms of features, right? So you might not get the same environment essentially that you should be building towards.
Understood. Thanks, guys. Open call for technical questions, 20 Zeta prize. We're all going to make it. Guy actually did comment, so you can comment your questions. How to build multi-chain game on Zeta. This is more of an application question. We actually just met Camille, the founder of Upcade. He's here at ECC, so they are enabling deposits from Bitcoin and other connected chains to play a game, and you could connect and play with players on any chain and abstract the blockchain away. I think that's the big use case. But Lucas, Dennis, any thinking on how to build a multi-chain game on Zeta and what to use ZetaChain for versus a lot of the game, I suppose, could live off-chain too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ZetaChain is EVM compatible, so any applications that you build on existing EVM is also an application that you can build on ZetaChain. Now, regarding multi-chain games, so the nature of ZetaChain is that we have this universal EVM in the idea that you can interact with the universal EVM from any external chains that are connected to ZetaChain. So if you build, for example, yeah, in fact, it really depends on the nature of the game. So there is different aspects of GameFi. Sometimes you have this idea of a fully on-chain game, of game with off-chain nature, but you can build a game on ZetaChain that you can interact with from Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana in the future. And I think it opens up for a lot of interesting opportunities, interesting use cases for different kind of game where you could basically interact with the game from Ethereum. So how to build a game? I mean, that's still the on-chain part will still be solidity development. Then, I mean, the nature of the the actual way you develop the game really depend on the nature of the game. But I think this idea of being like the idea of chain abstraction being interoperable, you can initiate transaction from any external chain, can open up for very interesting use cases for gaming.
Cool.
I think what we can add to this, what I can add to this is with the ability to transfer arbitrary data and call contracts to and from ZetaChain, what you can also do is, let's say you have an NFT item on Ethereum, right? And in your game, it's represented somehow, right? You can move this asset from Ethereum to ZetaChain into your game and move it to a different chain as well. So I think that's also a pretty powerful mechanism where if you have a game that uses NFT items as in-game items, you can now kind of freely move them between chains. And even kind of going further, once we support IBC, if you decide to make a game fully on-chain, and you decide to go with a sovereign chain approach, ZetaChain is still going to be this hub that you will likely want to route tokens through, because it's just going to be connected to everything, and your chain will likely not have a direct connection to Bitcoin or Ethereum, because you don't want to, as a game developer, even if you're building it fully as a sovereign chain, you don't want to take care of bridges and all of this, right? So the easiest way for you would be to have your game as a sovereign chain connect through IBC to your universal app payment contract, which is going to handle all incoming and outgoing transactions to all the chains connected to ZetaChain.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, deploy your app to ZetaChain as a universal app, and you have access to liquidity and users on all chains. Whether it's DeFi or gaming, it's the same value prop to a developer. Checking for other questions here. Last call for technical questions. And we're all going to make it, Guy. I will DM you for your EVM address, and we'll shoot you 20 Zeta. Thanks for your question. Last call for questions, and I'll just, this is more of a DevX thing, and maybe you could comment on it, Lucas, but, Alchemy came on board a week ago. I'm not a developer, but like apparently a really big deal that will make developing much easier on ZetaChain. Tenderly just went live. This is not public news yet. I just spoke with the largest subgraph indexer. I can't say the name right now, but they're likely coming on board like a 2 to 6 week process through governance proposal. What do these things mean, like for developer experience, and anything to share around some of these new dev tooling providers?
Yeah, of course. As a developer, having EVM and interoperability is powerful, but at the same
Oh,
you might need. Can you hear me?
you broke up for a second. You're back.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. So you might depend on Alchemy for RPC endpoints, on Gold Sky for subgraphs. So it would be pretty difficult for most sophisticated applications to actually migrate from one provider to another. So the more providers we have, of course, the easier it is for developers to port their applications, because augmenting an existing EVM application to become a universal app is arguably easier than migrating from one um, uh, 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 subgraph provider to another. Uh, so yeah, in terms of subgraphs, we are actually in a pretty good position because we have Gold Sky NVO um, subquery, um, and we're talking to other providers as well. As for Alchemy, right now they provide RPC endpoints, which I believe it's called Supernode. But what I'm more excited about is the services that are going to come next later this year. So Alchemy has a bunch of different products that developers can use, and yeah, I'm looking forward to more of their products coming to ZetaChain.
Indeed. And we'll make something like OpenSea integration a lot easier for NFT marketplace. More on that to come closer to the fall for everyone listening. Lucas and Dennis, we're in July. In one sentence, what's the biggest thing that's coming that you're focused on? If one sentence is possible, I know protocol stuff can be pretty complex, but Lucas, you go first.
Yeah, I would say more modular and developer-friendly design that will make developing a cross-chain application as simple as developing normal decentralized application on a single chain.
Very good. Yeah, a lot of this work, it sounds like, will pay off immediately and in the long run, just making easier development. And then we'll probably have some sexier news around chain support and different features coming on next month's AMA and the subsequent ones. How about you, Dennis? Biggest thing you're focused on in July with the other DevX contributors?
Well, it's definitely the work that the protocol team is doing on the gateway contract. I think it's going to simplify the developer experience so much. We have so many things so many things in the documentation that they have to learn, and with this simplification, is just going to make lives easier. On the DevX side, I'm actually working on components for front-end developers. We have a very good swap example, and I want to bring this to more developers through new tutorials focusing on the front end.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. For everyone listening, thanks for joining. We're going to do a technical write-up on some of these updates we shared. And next week is ecosystem call. I'm trying to get some of these new dev providers to come on that AMA, as well as some dApps. Let us know if there are particular ones that you want to hear from. And yeah, with that, Lucas and I are going to run back to the ETHCC conference and represent ZetaChain and keep growing this ecosystem. So, Dennis, thanks for hopping on, and thanks everyone for joining. See you next week.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.